Okay, this is Michael's Mosaic, second episode. We have a special guest today, field director for Donald Trump presidential campaign, Sean Lee. Hi, Sean.
Hey Michael, how are you? Good
I'm
to
good.
see
I'm
you.
good. How about you?
Good. Just
Yeah.
returned home from a long journey and stuff, and with
hmm
our historic victory,
hmm
and with a lot of things in mind and stuff. But yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I'll say
hmm
the victory was very historic.
Okay, can you introduce yourself? You go to George Washington University. Just a short biography for our audience.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I recently graduated from George Washington University this past May in the summer. Originally from the Southern California area here, grew up in the West LA area, and now here in Orange County. But then after when college wrapped up, I pretty much joined the Trump team within the RNC there with the people I knew from the state party here and from the people I knew in DC. And politics was always something that, I wanted to do, and it was my interest, and especially within the election season and this campaign and supporting the former president and now our president again for the 47th. So that's what kind of ended up me doing it because it was timing wise, you know, at a pretty young age could still relocate to anywhere in the country and stuff. So that were, kind of led me to the state, especially in battleground states like Nevada and Arizona and other places. So
It was a dramatic campaign. Donald Trump, his life is just amazing. That's how I think when I look at Donald Trump, him as a businessman, as a real estate developer, and as a writer, as an entertainer, reality star, and he went right to number one, right? Even in politics.
yeah.
It's just amazing. It truly is. And you worked in Nevada. Nevada was not considered a swing state 4 years ago, as I understand. It was a pretty blue state, and you were right there in the swing state as a field director there. Can you kind of tell us from the grassroots what was happening? Because a lot of people have been ignoring Nevada, but then I remember beginning of this year that Trump was trouncing Joe Biden, and why did that happen? Why did a blue state like Nevada suddenly become a red state? He won in a pretty wide margin there, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much kind of starting off with like the statistics was because out of all, right, as you said, Michael, right, Nevada wasn't like the ones that they really targeted on. It
Mm,
wasn't really like the major battleground state, right? Only 60 electoral votes, one of the smallest populations, within the country and stuff. But there's something that they've realized, especially within low propensity.
mhm,
And I think this was specifically, I think they emphasized Nevada a lot because when they were doing the polling and doing the research for the past couple of years, they've kind of noticed that, especially somewhere like in Las Vegas or, Reno, Carson City, usually like, it takes a long time, right? Because, each state has different election laws, but it looks like from the campaign's perspective that, somewhere like Nevada was something worth going compared to 2020 and compared to 2016. And when you look at the margin and people say, oh, the last time the Republicans got it was, back in, '04, right, during the Bush. But, there's been, increase of population, increase of resources coming in and stuff. So I think after the 2020 election, they really kind of looked at it, number wise, and they say, well, what can we do differently and what can we do more of an outreach? Because
mhm.
Nevada, out of all the battleground states, was always the one that had the least advantage because of how the money is being allocated within the RNC. So that's why we always had, a couple people because they kind of looked at it as, the higher the population that battleground state has, that means the more staffing, the more team there should be in. So Nevada was like in the less smaller team
Oh.
compared to battleground state. So I was one of the only like four field directors there from it. But that's my understanding right now because it's only 60 electoral votes. Knowing what happened in 2020, they wanted to focus it on more. And our Nevada GOP chair, Chairman Michael McDonald is one of a close advisor to the president. So I think that also had a relationship there as well because he's really good friends with the team and he knows
Mhm.
people from the administration. And that's how things really ended up happening. And of
Uh-huh.
course, Nevada is like blue, but it's not as blue as California or not blue as New
Yeah, of
York.
course.
That's the kind
Uh-huh.
of strategic, advice that they've kind of taken into and with the new leadership coming in.
Did you say there were four field directors in Nevada?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, I remember, yeah, Nevada was considered a swing state like a decade ago. Then it was blue and so you're saying that Nevada was almost like an afterthought among all the swing states that they didn't had a lot of high hopes there?
I would say, I mean, well, It was more just because of, how smaller the state was, like compared to Pennsylvania, let's say, because Pennsylvania was still
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I
of everything,
mean,
right? Georgia and stuff. So it wasn't obviously like the attention where it was going is different from those kind of states. But at the end, it was still categorically after 2020 put into that spot because of
hmm
how close the margin within the major metropolitan areas were. For example,
hmm
like, Clark County in Vegas, Washoe County up in Reno. So that's
uh-huh,
how we've kind of developed into that
uh-huh.
perspective into it.
So when you talked with the constituents there, what was their number one issue? What did they care among all the issues out there? What issue did they care about the most when you listened to the constituents? Because you knocked on doors and you talked with the people, with the voters there. What did they say?
Yeah. So as always, especially what we've learned after, because the main thing was, right, in 2020, people were, freaking out with the pandemic. They're like, oh, what am I going to do? Right. And that
Hmm
was the whole, messaging on their part from Democrats, right? How can we do it? It's COVID that, COVID this. But
Yeah.
now in 2024, when we've learned, right, with this, current administration for the past 4 years, you go to the outreach, and this was not just cities. This is like, any type of area where you knock on their doors and you have a civilized conversation. Their main concern was, I work more than two jobs. I work more than three jobs. How is the minimum wage going to affect this? I still need to put, food on the table for my family. I need to make ends meet. That was the critical part. And it's something that, it's important, but it became repetitive as you're kind of new in the
hmm
field. Even in the rallies, right? When people get a couple interviews or something from outlets, like
hmm
that's the main thing. And not saying, other topics don't matter, but it's just, how can I, financially be stable, and how can I, not be in a position where it's too detrimental and I can't afford things, and affordability. So it all came back to the theme of economy. And then after that, then you have, whatever, the abortion, you have immigration, you have the border, right? It goes down. But
hmm
from the field that I was covering in within that district, I will say like 9% of the time it was about things are too expensive. I can't afford stuff and inflation's too high.
Did you have to deal with the media a lot? You
For
know, the
me,
media
no.
always was trying to portray like Donald Trump is far from what do you call it, minorities. You know, they try to portray him like this far right wing, white supremacist. They always try to attach these kind of ridiculous stuff, white supremacists, all these kind of ridiculous nonsense, these fake news narrative. Did you face any of that, those kind of animosity there in Nevada?
For me, it was, I mean, well, we had a whole comms team. We had our comms director who was only allowed to talk to the press, like specifically in
Okay,
terms of,
all right.
quoting them, having a phone call, interview and stuff. But I would say, the most animosity you will deal with is probably like in rallies and stuff, because, you kind of have like all credentials and all outlets there. And usually I would say that that's the most I encountered, at least in the field, perspective on the political staff. But we did have a comms team who kind of dealt with that.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty sure, knowing the atmosphere, right, on a federal level too, it wouldn't be surprising if on a state level that they've always done that as well.
How many Trump rallies did you see?
For me, I covered about, let me see, about four. Well,
Wow.
there was like four rallies, and we had so many other supplemental events.
Mhm.
We had the Team Trump tour. We had the one with Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Don Jr. came in. We also had a separate JD Vance rally. So, and we had like campaign surrogates who came into town for Nevada. So I would
Did
say, I
Trump?
mean, probably more than four now if it's
Okay.
like rally plus, other events.
Did Trump have teleprompters when he spoke to the audience? Or was he teleprompter free like he always said, brags about? Politicians are supposed to not rely on prompters. And it is true. I think Donald Trump is probably the only he started this movement of politicians not relying upon teleprompters and give these kind of impromptu, lively answers. Well, did he have prompters? But I would think that you need those prompters at least to kind
Yeah,
of stick, rather than I know that he said he's excellent with he says weave, right? He
yeah.
he always comes back to the point, but I want to know, since he is such an excellent communicator, I've never seen an excellent communicator like Trump. I already told you in private. I really do. I really think one of the main
Yeah.
reason why he became president is because he is such an excellent speaker. When I say excellent speaker, I'm not talking about like being eloquent and all that, but what I'm saying is uh relaying your message clearly to the voters. There is no confusion with Trump. You know where he stands. So yeah, did he have prompters or was he just pretty much off the cuff all the way?
From what I remember was, because the biggest one we had was like a week before election day. It was, so this is the one with Turning Point together. So we did a joint one with the
Oh,
campaign
okay.
point. It It was at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada there.
Charlie Kirk was there?
Yeah, Charlie Kirk was there. The whole it was like the biggest one out of all of them since
Hmm.
this was the arena. Based on what the advanced team told me was that it wasn't like a teleprompter that we kind of know, right, from like a standard TV, but I think
Hmm.
it's from the stage. When you have the podium there, there's like this
Yeah.
invisible glass, I think, that you can
Uh-huh.
only see from first person point of view. I think
Hmm.
that's what he kind of had, but half of the time, you could tell by his eye contact right from the audience that he wasn't looking at that. He was more just like looking in the front and then trying to, look all over the arena. So you could already tell by, more than 70% of the time he wasn't looking
Yeah.
at it. It's quite impressive,
Hmm.
knowing how long you have to speak as well. And at the same time, just getting that same, energy and enthusiasm within the crowd anywhere you go.
Hmm. Sean, you're a very young guy, and the most surprising thing about this year's election was that Trump got a lot of youth votes. A lot of youth votes. Did you feel that fervor towards Trump that you thought that this election will be different than 2020 and or even 2016?
Oh yeah, I think with that kind of wave and for that kind of movement, people only say, oh, it's just the typical, conservative clubs that, are involved with this. But you look at, and obviously this is a thing where I think the media does a pretty not good job on because, they might see it, right? They might see the content, they might see an opportunity, but they still might not do it because it might hurt
Hmm.
them. And that's what I've realized in a lot of campuses too. Because like if you look at, like Turning Point, for example, like people just know them as like, oh, Charlie Kirk or Phoenix or this, but they help out people knock doors, they help out protect the vote, too big to rig. That was our whole theme of the campaign. And knowing that right within the network, you have from clubs to other organizations and from other institutions who really envy that. And even from Washington, D.C., you have all these sort of think tanks. And most people average on that age are like, some of them my age, some of them are a little younger, some of them are a little older. So they're all within, the 18-27 age. So, and for Turning Point, at least like 87% of the people who are involved with that are all students or high school kids or out of college or whatever. So
Hmm.
I think, there's been a record number of that. And I think that's going to keep growing based on how
Hmm.
the messaging is going to be.
Hmm. You know, a lot of people, including me, were worried about rigging. Rigging, that's what most of my friends, my Republican friends, my conservative friends were worried about. I was worried about it, that Trump would be way up like this and then drop steeply like what happened in 2020. And was that a concern in the Trump campaign in when you were working as a field director in Nevada? Was that any concern, or was it just something that the constituents worried more? Is that a real thing? Because Trump did answer in Sunday with the interview with NBC's Kristen Welker, right?
Yeah.
He said that she asked him point blank, what do you think about uh, the rigging? And he said he still believed that there was rigging, but it was too big to rig. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the president says was correct because this is what we had. So in main battleground states, we had, the main thing we kind of divided into two little teams, even though we're in same campaign teams. It was the
Hmm.
political team and we had the election integrity team. So the election integrity team was the one monitoring all that. So we have
Hmm.
this thing called a war room on election day. It's like
Hmm.
a war room that, you kind of people kind of maybe, describe it as like the New York Stock Exchange or that kind of vibe where you have like, Wall Street people in a room, but this is kind of more for the campaign people on election day.
Yeah.
You can see and monitor things. So during the whole, campaign trail, the election integrity team would always hire like volunteers and like poll watchers and poll observers so that they have
Hmm.
the right, under the state election law to be at polling sites and voting
Hmm.
centers to make sure that you observe and kind of monitor things. And the election workers there, cannot refuse you or deny your entry because it's already been approved by the county and within, the
Yeah.
federal government. So
Hmm.
that's what we mainly did. And this was like the major difference, I'll say, compared to 2020, because we had record-breaking numbers of people who wanted to poll watch, poll observe, right? It's a long shift. It's like a couple
You're
of hours
right. Yeah,
and
so many
right.
people voluntarily, right? Not being paid, right? Because they
Yep,
were worried about
voluntarily,
2020, what happened in 2020, and they did not want these kind of things happen, like, right? For so to
yeah,
speak, rigging.
yeah. So that's what I think, played a huge role into that because we really did have a lot of people in every voting centers, and that's what other battleground states did the same thing. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure, nothing was perfect, but without them, there could have still been a huge difference, and who knows
Okay.
what else could have been, right? Because it's all about trust, if you know about it, unfortunately. So
6,500 lawyers. According to Lara Trump.
Yep. We had about a couple lawyers who flew in on the election day, so we had people from HQ. They were in the war room together. We were in, major, communication with them. If there's anything, suspicious or anything that was fishy, we would usually just, tell the lawyers, tell them which location it is, who it was, what happened. You describe it, we take video and flash photography if allowed, and
Mhm.
so that's how we did it. And people were pretty, up to pace and kind of knew about it because I know the older folks maybe could have had a difficult time, but we had a whole very clear, presentation so that it could have been very clear. So that's what the election integrity team did, and I think that they've done a
Were they
pretty.
all voluntary too, 6,500 lawyers, or were they paid? I was
I believe
wondering.
they're, I believe they were paid. It
They
was
were
through the
paid.
RNC, so I'm
Okay.
assuming it's paid. Yeah.
Okay. So we have this man, uh Time Magazine chose Donald J. Trump, Donald John Trump as Person of the Year. What's your thought on this? Is he well deserved for this? I don't know whether he should be honored for it because Time Magazine is probably slanted as you can get. It's probably the most biased magazine out there. Among all the periodicals, I believe Time was the worst. But what do you think? This is today, you know.
Knowing it came out today, I think it's really you could tell how people have spoken. That's probably like one word I'll say, right? Because no matter how regardless of that position or how you're trying to really execute that agenda, you kind of see, right? Numbers tell you, and exactly on election day, people have spoken. So it kind of felt like maybe they were like in an inevitable position to do it
Hmm.
because inaugurations, what 4 or 5 weeks
Yeah.
now,
Hmm.
and they kind of need to put up something. And this is kind of really releasing, saying that it was the biggest political comeback, and the other side who opposed it did as much as they can, but they still couldn't defeat him on it. And I think
Yeah.
that's exactly showing on the cover.
Is it that much more fulfilling when it's not just the White House, but you also win the Senate, the House, which is a mandate? And can you talk about that? Because people don't they want to. I mean, there is a difference, right? Whether usually it happens like you take the House, but you lose the Senate, you win the
Yeah.
White House. It's back and forth. But this time he won all three. The Republicans won all three. Do you
Yeah.
consider that as a mandate?
Mandate, and I think it was just a big tap on the shoulder for back
Hmm.
every. I know, of course, like there were some House races and some Senate races that could have done better, and we could have done a little better on, but unfortunately, it
The
didn't.
House race was fishy, man. The
Yeah,
House race was fishy,
especially here in the States. So that's why we
especially
need
in
to get the majority.
Especially in California. I mean, somebody's got to do something about this election law. I mean, it took 23 days for the 45th district congressional district, which Michelle Park Steele lost. And then I heard that there was a San Diego race that wasn't finished the last time I checked until last Friday.
And there's up one in Merced as well, and John
Are
Dorte's.
they still counting that?
No, they didn't, but he lost by 187 votes for that.
This is ridiculous. I mean, something's wrong with California, you know?
There's a lot of, and even the state party said it too, right? It's just that they're always the last state, and it's always, if you confront something about it, then you're called this and that. And I think, I'm completely in support of a federal like election law,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that the next coming administration does that.
So what do you think Trump should do first day in office? What do you think is his priority? Number one, if you have to choose top three.
I think that well, we should first, really focus on the domestic issues, just like how the whole theme was about America first.
Hmm.
People kind of thought it the wrong way, but I don't think and I think that that was something that we said in with intention because there's so much going on domestic first that we need to figure out,
Hmm.
and then we could kind of start expanding that. So I'll say definitely number one, the southern border, that we need to completely shut it down, just like what Vivek Ramaswamy said. Completely, just the amount of pouring and back and forth of loopholes to that. I think who knows, right? People didn't even know the number anymore because of how ridiculous it got. So I think that the border is number one. And then number two, this might take a little time and stuff, but it's definitely, our current market, how, with inflation. Of course, it's not something that can be fixed within like 24 hours like that, but that's something that needs to be in a gradual process to get the country back on track.
Hmm. Which is
Number
probably
three,
directly
yeah.
dealt with dealing with f fossil fuel, I believe. And number three?
And number three, I'll say is, what's going on, especially, worldwide now, with, the Israel Palestine, now with, the recent, news, what we heard about South Korea's martial law,
Yeah.
China and Russia. It's it's repetitive, but now it's a different administration, different tactic, different approach, and who knows? Because especially if you look at Hamas already, they're already surrendering. So maybe that's a good
Hmm.
start before the incoming administration. So I would
What do you
say,
think about President Yoon's martial law? I think the country's very divided right now. There's a lot of people who supported his martial law, and there's a lot. Initially, everybody was against it, but later they heard its reasoning, and I think a lot of them are supporting. And what do you think about that?
look, I think number one, just you know this is how I look at it. I don't think, the president has a lot of pressure, has a lot of things that, it might not even be his fault, right? But he will come out and say, well, sorry for doing this or this has happened. And I think you need to give President Yoon, some credit. And it doesn't feel like there was no malice intent because
Hmm.
the Korean politics is very different the way it functions. And I see how, the opposition party, more than the martial law, like, let's be honest here, they're really more doing it because they don't like Yoon, right? If you look at Lee Jae-myung, right? I think he's the Democratic Party leader there.
He's a Democratic, yeah,
And
party leader.
I think now he's trying to weaponize, his own party to go after his political opponent. So it
Hmm.
feels like just because, the US is doing it, some other countries like Korea might now have a potential or might possibly be influenced in that kind of same way of doing it. So I think more than the martial law, the opposition party and the people who oppose him is because they just don't like him, right? Just like how for Trump, they just don't like the man.
Hmm.
And I understand on why he did it, right? People say, oh, it's a bunch of, BS conspiracy theory, there's no pro North Korean influence. But I mean, if you look at it, like within our day and age, you got the feminist movement, you got more woke progressive things, and that's why I'm not a big fan of, with all this K-pop people trying to, say something, and you got, people,
Yeah,
film
like
industry like
the
running their
same
mouth
thing is
on it.
like Taylor Swift saying her 2 cents about politics. What does she know about politics?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why I wasn't a big fan of them. I mean, yeah, I give them credit for what they've done, and it's amazing. But at the same time, there's a time and place
I don't
for.
think Taylor Swift's songs are that amazing, to be honest with you.
I'm not.
Do
I
you
was never
love
a
any
fan
of
of
her
her.
songs?
Same thing.
I don't understand it. I really don't get it. Taylor Swift, I mean she was a person of the year as we're speaking, for 2023, but I don't think her songs were widely loved. Like for instance, Michael Jackson. We all knew Michael Jackson songs like Billie Jean, Beat It, Black or White, all these super famous songs all over the world, like We Are the World. Taylor Swift, I don't think she has a single song that went viral worldwide. Probably teenage girls love her song like "Shake It Off." To me, that song, I don't know. I think that song sucks. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I just don't get it.
And I always consider the lyrics too, right? Like, what are you saying? And is that good for the audience? Like, you might have younger people, right? But
Mhm.
not a lot of these people know what the lyrics is going on. So I kind of interpret more things, right? Not saying, going against anything what they do, right? They got amazing talent, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, they all have agendas, and we all know for obvious reasons on how they want to present that. So
Yeah.
I think this goes with any of them,
Mhm.
K-pop singers, celebrities, because now a lot of times, right, you've never heard any of these people, but at this, just because they feel like doing it, that's what they do. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people in Korea have been doing that too. They know nothing about it, but at the same time, they're just like, oh, the
Like jumping
majority.
on the bandwagon, right?
Yep,
Uh-huh.
that's what I've always saying. It looks like,
Yeah.
I always think president, always has a point. I'm not saying, no one's saying he's the perfect guy, right? But
No, no,
at the
nobody
same
saying
time,
that.
there needs to be some things where, there's a lot of things that he needs to get the blame where he's not
Hmm.
supposed to be getting it.
Hmm. Do you think President Yoon and President Trump would get along better compared to Lee Jae-myung?
I don't know. I think I personally, in my heart, my heart says that I think, President Trump will prefer, President Yoon much
Yeah.
over if let's say if Lee Jae-myung was about to get it. And I think the biggest factor is because of, the pro North Korean and the anti North
Hmm.
Korean part. That's probably the most significant part.
Yeah.
But
That's what I think too. I think the Democratic Party in Korea, they're too pro North Korea, too pro China, and I just don't understand it. Many of the LGBT, they seem to be trying to appease the LGBTQ community, and I'm worried that what the transgender craziness that has happened in America would probably be imported to South Korea because in South Korea you have these kind of mentality where they think it's so cool if you're, if it hits America because a lot of them worship America. I mean, I'm being frank. A lot of them really do. So whatever hits here, they worship it and try to repackage it over there. And sometimes it works, like K-pop became K-pop because of Western American music, like Michael Jackson or all these influential pop artists like Madonna and Britney Spears. Um, But I think Korea, a lot of South Koreans, they just pretty much worship a lot of American culture here, and I think that's just wrong in my opinion.
Mhm. Without no knowledge and stuff. And I think in Korea, one thing is like if something happens in the US, they will want to follow it because
Yeah.
I think the theme of lookism, I think Koreans tend to be obsessed with that, like how they, the appearance, how they're being presented, right? And I always say it's a culture effect, but it seems like, more people are obsessed with it as
Hmm.
the years goes by.
Sure. Do you think the media would be a little bit softer to Trump this time around? You know how nasty the media was. They spread out fake news, disinformation, misinformation. Washington Post, among them all, I think they're also one of the worst, including Time Magazine. Washington Post was fact-checking Trump on ridiculous claims, even his jokes. Like they claim like what how many times that Trump lied? 13,000. That's all a lie too. If you really look into it, there were a lot of truth behind what Trump was saying. Of course, he uses uh, hyperbole, but you know how nasty the media was towards Trump. It never happened to a single individual in history, I believe. Do you think second time around the media will calm down? Do you think the media has already calmed down with MSNBC, CNN, their ratings you know, dipping and dipping and dipping? People don't even watch them anymore. What do you think?
Look, I think, with the media, knowing how it's impossible to control them, but it feels like, just because, their side of the party lost or anything, more than that, I think they'll still, use their confrontational kind of tone. Like, for example, for a lot of the people from MSNBC, like on even an election night when we won, like, you could tell by their face and tone, right, that they didn't even want to say that, right? They're like, oh, he won, someone
It's
was
not just MSNBC, even CVS. I forgot her name. I forgot her name. It's usually these certain female. I mean, not just female, but yeah. I mean,
sound
I
like a
think
great
it's
example, yeah.
very difficult to dis. It's very difficult to stomach them. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm so sick and tired of the mainstream media. I've been exposing them throughout my entire journalistic career. To be honest with you, most of the Korean journalists, they all worship. I'm telling you, most of my 90% colleagues, they were worshiping NYT, WAPO, CNN, LA Times, sucking, just kissing their butt. And I was the one who criticized them. And I said, you guys are becoming an accomplice to all these fake news media. But what do you think? Do you think things would change, or it would be status quo?
I think there will be, especially with the changes, knowing, who's going to be staffing what or who's going to be in charge of what, especially like, let's say, for example, the press secretary's department, you know, because I think, if you've seen all the nominations and all the appointees that, the president has been making, it's all by number one loyalists. Can we trust you? More than the experience part. So it's really been a lot of people like, who has been in the campaign or who's been, someone that he trusted, a couple of years back for the previous admin. So it looks like, knowing them, they will know how to tackle that agenda. We'll have to fight along with it because it's obviously, knowing some people, right? People don't change instantly. And knowing a lot of the media outlets will do that, I feel like, it'll still be like a media war back and forth. And I think
Hmm.
the more what we need to do is just like what we're doing right now, right? Speaking the truth, going, with the facts and really, kind of exposing that kind of mis and disinformation because they like to say it on our side, but at the same time, what
Hmm.
value are you bringing into that when you're kind of pushing your one agenda and literally, causing I'll say, potential violence. And I'll say, when he almost got assassinated, I feel like, that had a huge factor to the other side of how, the kind of words and the kind of language that they're
I
being
think their language and their hateful rhetoric has caused it. Like lunatics like Whoopi Goldberg, and another lunatic like Joey Behar. Chris Cuomo. I mean, Chris Cuomo got a little bit better, but all these lunatics, I don't think they're journalists. I think they're propaganda. What do you call? Activists. They are activists disguised as journalists. They're not journalists. They don't want to tell the truth. That's why something like Trump-Russia collusion can spread out like wildfire, even though it was completely fake from the get-go.
yeah, with those kind of people, and I'm pretty sure, it's not like we don't know. It's kind of like it's impossible to catch all of them, but we still need to be prepared for whatever needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty sure, they're kind of shocked with that result. So I'm really hoping that
They're,
essentially
they're they're gonna go
whatever needs
after
to
Trump,
go
I
up.
think. I don't think they changed. I don't think, I think they're the most satanic group. Personally, I really think the mainstream media people, they are very satanic. If you read their editorial board, that's why I applaud LA Times owner Patrick Chun-Chung. He fired the entire board member there, and he brought in Scott Peterson. You know Scott Peterson, the CNN
Yep. Yep. Yep.
senior political comment
Yep. And then yeah, the
yeah,
board.
political analyst, and I think I applaud him for that. He's trying to change it, and people would not read their paper anymore. NYT, WAPO, LA Times. Why would they read it? You know, it's just ridiculous. It's not even fact based, super opinionated, and I think people got sick and tired of it. And I think probably the youth, like you, and also probably a lot of your peers, don't they acknowledge it too? Do they acknowledge it, or is it just me, like veteran reporter like me, who see this bias happening in the media world, media landscape?
Yeah, at least within my peers, at least with the campaign team and stuff. Of course, we're all in the same boat and stuff. But with the opposite side, they unfortunately they still think like that. It's it's really, they try to prove a point where, you know, okay, I guess I will respect it, but at the same time, do you actually like believe it? Like what is like, going through your brain to say that, oh, what Whoopi Goldberg said was probably, pretty accurate, and I'm just gonna start believing that. Or there's this one movement, so oh, it seems it's pretty interesting. So it's more like their interest if you look at it,
Yeah.
more than the issue, right? There's no knowledge into it. It's more just like, oh, does my friend do it? Let me go check it out. And then you kind of, so it's really brainwashing, propaganda,
hmm
what you're saying. And
hmm
it goes back
hmm
to all of that.
hmm Yeah. Trump talks a lot about tariff. And a lot of South Korean people were very worried about that, that Trump might slap some tariffs, since South Korea, what I believe is their trade surplus against America for 2024, fiscal year of 2024 is, I believe, $50 billion. Yeah, that's a projected number. And Trump's kind of pissed off about these kind of things, right? The trade deficits. He's a businessman, and
Hmm.
he wants to shrink the deficit. And what do you think? Do you think he would slap tariff all the way around? Like he actually did it, right? He actually did in his first term. He slapped a whole bunch of tariffs against China, and also including South Korea and all over the world, I believe. What do you think? Do you think he's gonna level up more tariffs?
I would say like somewhere like, Korea and China could be a little different, but I think it really goes back to the whole theme of, how, you know, other countries have been ripping us off for years and years, right?
That's
And no
true.
other
That is
country
without a
has,
doubt true. Yeah.
right? And it's just like, ripping us off. Like, what do you mean? Like, but it's kind of like, Trump saying, you know, we're the main country, right? We respect our allies, we want to help our allies, but at the same time, you can't just expect like all the other countries to just rely on US, right? For example, let's say, you have something that you need to pay for, but you can't just be relying on your parents to, paying for your whole thing throughout the rest of your life. And I think that's just a lot of the analogies that people don't like to admit. And they're just kind of butthurt that you have someone like a Washington
I
outsider who
think
comes
so.
in now and
Yeah,
they're
I
like, oh,
think
he's
so.
not lenient with us. And I'm just like, well, lenient or not, this is just, the hardcore reality we need to face. And we're not
Yeah.
just completely doing a embargo or anything like that. We're not shutting it off. We're just trying to make a reasonable deal. And if, for example, if Koreans are pissed off about that, and then if someone like you and me support that, they might be like, oh, this is your country. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter if it's
No,
my country or not. It's just,
no,
it's
what I'm
looking at
trying
it
to say,
realistically, right?
yeah, it's just ridiculous because I think Korea made a lot of money when Trump is in office because the gas price was much lower. They shouldn't just think about the the military situation there. So that's what I'm saying. I think they Korea can do much better under Trump. And I already said it on my show that South Korea should be thankful that a person like Trump is back in office because look at how the gas prices went up and look at the worldwide turmoil that has happened between Israel and Palestine, Ukraine, Russia. These were not happening under Trump. So I think it's a much unstable world and it is a much more stable world. I consider Trump to be the adult. You know, the mainstream media always treated him like he's a like some kind of spoiled brat and you needed like axis of adults like John Kelly, Jim Mattis. You remember that narrative?
With the
It's
name calling.
ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
Trump is the adult. He is the adult, and you have these spoiled brats like NYT WAPO, CNN, these media bunch of lunatics, plus Jim Mattis, John Bolton, who's also another crazy lunatic guy who's just crazy about committing war all over the place. Don't you think President Donald J. Trump, the 45th and the 47th President Donald J. Trump, he's the adult in this whole crazy world?
Yeah, absolutely. And then people like, well, more like an outsider, but the outsider is the reason why we're kind of bringing it up, and we're kind of, you know, going from a new direction of how we lift people up, economically and financially, and that's what exactly that they've been doing. And for other people, whether if it's some sort of personal or jealousy issue, they like to do that.
Yeah, that's what I
That's
think
what
it
John
is.
Bolton's
Yeah,
doing, right? Because he served in the admin, and just because he didn't get what he wanted, now he's just trying to go
yeah.
after. Same with Michael Cohen, everyone else.
I just don't understand it. These are not elected officials. We didn't vote them in. Donald J. Trump was the one who got over 76, is it 77 million almost
Oh yeah.
votes, right? And they seem to have this arrogance and some kind of lunacy and also hallucination that they're the one who got these votes. I mean, I'm reading John Bolton's book, What Happened in the White House, a White House Memoir. This guy's a lunatic. I mean, the way he judges Donald J. Trump, I mean, if I read page by page, he said, Trump should do this, Trump should do that, and if he doesn't follow through with what he wants, then he thinks that Trump is a spoiled brat or something. It's ridiculous.
At the end of the day, he's your boss, right? If you look at it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Even John Kelly, he's a crazy guy too. He's not the one who's voted in. So I think Trump should never pick these kind of crazy lunatics like John Kelly, Jim Mattis. Who's the other dude?
Nikki Haley,
Mark
right?
Milley, Nikki Haley. I just don't understand it. The people, if they really want to change, why don't they run for the office? Why don't Jim Mattis, John Kelly, John Bolton, why don't they run for office? They're not going to get a single vote. And it's just ridiculous how these people are so arrogant to judge Trump, and the media also so arrogant to say that Trump is a like some kind of spoiled brat, and you have these acts of adults containing him. It's just this narrative is so disgusting, man. You know how tired I am? You're just reading these articles in itself. It's so disgusting, and I'm so sick and tired of it. I hope they just disappear. I know that they're not, but they are disappearing in a way. MSNBC is disappearing, right?
I mean, if you look at their views, right, it's kind of going like this, like that.
And they're going to divest. I think NBC said that they're going to divest MSNBC, so they're going to change to some kind of other channel, tennis channel, I don't know. But good riddance, good riddance. CNN too. CNN, their morning viewership is 400,000. That's from Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, all the way to Key West, Florida. 400,000. That's like a hit YouTube show would get more views than
Yeah,
that.
400 years.
Yeah, so I think people are staying away from these lunatics. I think they are the most satanic and corrupt thing that's going on in America. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that assessment? I think that they are the most, they're even more corrupt than politicians. That's how I view them. What
And
do
I
you?
think the problem is, not just that, but now they're trying to, use that leverage and influence other people, other countries. If
Yeah,
you
exactly. Like South
that's
Korea.
yep. And I feel like that's their own domino, right? They're not
Yeah.
never gonna admit it, but
hmm
you just look at it,
Because
right?
South
Slowly
Korea we
that
have
country
yeah
builds.
because South Korea we have these idiot journalists. They're not journalists in my views, and they just copy paste whatever NYT WAPO CNN has to say, and they don't know what Fox News. They don't even understand it. I think they don't understand it, not because their English is short, but I think they are just not used to that narrative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you talk about people like Andy McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, they don't know who they are. John Durham, special counsel John Durham, you don't know, you know what I'm saying? So I had to educate these when I was news director at Radio Korea or even when I was working at Korea Daily. They didn't know anything. So I'm telling you, man, I didn't have journalists to talk with. You know what I mean? So I had to talk these topics with you, people like you, or it was kind of like lonely, man. And I think just by that alone, it really shows the current what do you say, the current status of Korean American media and also media in South Korea.
Just like how the amount of like the level of being educated, right, is like this low and like this.
It's just You can't even strike a conversation, to be perfectly honest with you, because they don't even know the characters that I'm talking about, you know. So it's just frustrating. I think it's because I am the first Korean American conservative commentator. I think I did break the mold, and a lot of there's a lot of YouTubers that came out after, you know, a lot of them were heavily influenced by me, what I understand is, and they just, you know, so I think the words are spreading more and more, but I just don't feel that it's wide enough, you know. People have to know more, but you know how Google suppress a lot of the shows, including mine, you know.
Mhm.
So you have these big tech companies also suppressing the truth, so which makes these journalists more dummies, you know. So I just think that it's very sad, and I'm just kind of venting right now a little bit. But probably you understand what what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Because you kind of see the obvious take, right? Because I think a lot of the people in the media, right, they're like, oh, they're so friendly, they're kind, they're an exchange your contact, but they're all doing it because of this, right? And they want to do it
Yeah,
because
that's true. You're
they
right.
film you,
Yeah.
they publish it, you know, they say
Mhm.
something totally different about you, and then that's why,
Exactly.
we were not
Exactly.
allowed to do it on the
Mhm.
campaign. You only had to come see him because we know for a fact what they do,
Yeah.
knowing.
hmm Yeah, because majority of the journalists, they're pretty much like other. I wouldn't compare it to other jobs, but it's like clock in and clock out. They go back home and watch a bunch of dramas, or you know, I mean that's up to them, you know. But I think if you're a news journalist, I think you have to have some kind of passion about it. But it seems like that is a dying breed, I guess, you know. Any other last words you want to say, Sean, to our audience?
I think that was pretty good, wonderful always, having you in our friendship and stuff. And especially, I think this is what we need to do, right? Whether if this is, when he gets in office, when he gets out of office, I think this kind of momentum still needs to continue because, even though, the Trump presidency might be over in 4 years, this thing is going to be a never-ending
I
story.
think it's going to continue. I think the MAGA spirit will continue.
Um,
And I think Donald Trump would be still probably the most influential figure even after him leaving office. Do you concur to that?
no, yeah, I think it's going to be like, it's going to like the day that will live in infamy. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's hard to say. Probably JD Vance might run, and I think Eric Trump and Donald J. Trump, Trump Jr. I think they're also being considered because I think they both are excellent communicators. Not as good as their dad, but they're pretty good, both of them, Eric Trump
Yeah.
and how. Oh, I want to ask you that Lara Trump, is she gonna get the Senate seat in Florida? Do you think Ron DeSantis will tap her to be the next Florida senator?
I really don't know. I mean, I think there's a possibility. I mean, people say Matt Gates and stuff, but I think if it's like Matt Gates and Laura Trump, I'm pretty sure they'll choose Laura Trump on that.
I don't think Matt Gates, because Matt Gates just got a job at OAN, right? Do you know that?
Oh, did he? No, I didn't know
Yeah, he
that.
did. He's a
Recently?
host of
Okay.
a new show. I don't understand.
Because I
That
remember
that
he
came.
withdrew, right? From Congress too after that. So it's like for
Yeah,
him, it was like,
yeah. I think Matt
uh,
Gates is out because he's gonna go that private sector. You know, he's a broadcast host now. I think he will be great at it because he's an excellent communicator, a little bit bombastic. But so Sean, who do you think are the journalists that our viewers should pay attention to, in your view?
really
Who are
hard
the
to
ones that you listen and you watch?
yeah.
Podcasters or YouTubers or Rumble. Yeah, I shouldn't even say Rumble, but yeah,
Yeah, I think the standard role, Tucker Carlson, the most, popular, the one with, I mean, and I think, Tucker, like, did even better after leaving Fox with
I
his
think so. Yeah, I
data.
think so.
And I think, people still love him. And, there's still a lot of independents who listen to him. The thing is, look, like, whether you disagree or not, like, if you say, like, you respect the person, I think that for me is more than do you agree with it, right?
Yeah,
I think civilization, being civilized, is a key component to that. And I think, Larry Elder, tops that too with
Larry
his
Elder.
communication
Yeah,
skills, with his great
my
analytics.
good friend. I'm proud to say that Larry Elder is a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Mhm. And I remember, and I'm glad I met him that time,
Oh yeah, you met him too, right? Yeah,
felt
yeah.
that turning point that time, and it was great. And was able to get in touch with him because him and I also had a lot of mutual connections when he ran for governor too.
hmm
So that was
He
nice.
is actually one of the architects, if you think about it. Like Stephen Miller, who's a senior advisor, senior political advisor in the White House, right? The new admin, Trump admin.
Yeah. Yep.
He was an intern, what I believe under Larry Elder back in the day, and also Ben Shapiro was inspired by him. I think that's how he started his podcasting career too, as well. And Dave Rubin, you know Dave Rubin, right?
Yep. Yeah.
He also transition from being a Young Turks liberal to a conservative. And Candace Owens also was heavily influenced by Larry Elder as well. I mean, he really did a lot, and I think um, I believe that Larry Elder is not getting the recognition as that he deserves. You know, even in the presidential primary race, they did him bad, man. Ronna McDaniel did him bad when he got all the conditions met. They didn't allow him to go to the debate stage. And I think it really shows that there's a lot of rigging going on still within the Republican
Yeah, that's what I say.
Party.
There's the rigging, the animosity within the same party too, and it's because of the self ambitions and
Oh yeah,
the
you said there are a lot of those things too,
yeah,
right?
even
That
within the same party, it's like it's number one, it's a waste of time, it's inefficient, but it's it's people's ego that gets in the way, and they're like
mhm,
I need to
got it.
push this, whatever, but it's
Mhm,
really gonna cause a whole downfall to the whole team, if
mhm,
some groups or some individuals act like that.
mhm.
So
Well,
that's
yeah, well, thank you very much, Sean. The last time we talked, I think I was at was it Culture Shock, right?
yep, yeah, culture shock
Yeah,
and that back
uh-huh,
in that
yeah.
station, but I'm
It's
glad
great.
now we kind of do this in a more civilized way.
Sure. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, always, always. And yeah, I'm glad that you helped Donald J. Trump go back to the White House. And I just wanted our viewers to know as well that there were a lot of Asian Americans that supported, a lot of Korean Americans. I think actually among all Asian group after Vietnamese, I think Koreans supported Trump the most. That's how I understand it. Last time around, it was like that. So,
Even
uh,
at the whole rallies, I was there too, because I witnessed it. He gave a whole shout out to the Asian American
oh,
community
did
there.
he? Yeah, yeah.
They had
Mhm.
their
He
whole
does
flag
that.
up.
He does that.
He
Yeah.
does that, and people and the media never. I haven't seen a single outlet who ever mentioned that either.
Yeah. And even I can see them on the rallies. You know what I'm saying? When Trump
Yep.
is doing his rally, you see these people behind him, right? And
Hmm.
I saw a lot of Asian girls, Asian men there, and nobody talks about them. It's like they don't even exist. But now they acknowledge it though, because he improved in every categories, right? Not just female votes, not just suburban votes, but also black votes, Hispanic votes, Asian votes. He improved in every single category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like if the number shows like that, like what are you gonna do? Like not choose to go that path and still run out your commentary. I mean, I won't
Uh,
be surprised, but the
I
numbers
but
that are
when I
right.
read it, I mean, so I read this New York Times piece where they talked about that. They didn't deny it, but
Yeah.
I kind of get this impression that it's almost reluctant. They are reluctantly writing this piece, as they're typing it. You know what I mean? I can
Yeah.
feel that. Probably I'm being overly sensitive, but yeah.
No, being in DC, I've noticed it a lot because you kind of meet a lot of people there, and when they
Oh
invite
man.
journalists and stuff within our department, you could already tell. You try to ask a question, they're like, "Oh, next question," or they try to
Oh man.
respectfully say, it, but you already know what the obvious answer for
It's
that
the
is.
Swamp City.
Yeah, and
Swamp
people
City,
clap for
right?
that because they enjoy it, and then it's the same thing that goes over and over again, and people call it
How
the
did
win.
you live there, man? Was 96% of the population Democrats? And didn't they vote like I heard that 97% to Kamala? Is it true?
Yeah, I think so. Or I think the most. I'm
Just
speechless
by
with that.
that alone, I can see how corrupt they are, how
Yeah,
out of touch they are. Hey, and I heard that all the what do you say, the richest counties, the top 10 richest county, I heard that th three or four of them are in DC. Is that true? Did you hear about this?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, like Navy Yard, I'm pretty sure is in that category. I'll say.
Who?
Navy Yard, it's that area in
Navy
DC
Yard?
where people
Oh,
have the
okay.
yeah, that could probably fit into that tire easily.
So I understand. I really support when Trump said that he wants to get the real estate price down in DC. I hope that happens in the next 4 years.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Like the average is probably like around 900 to a million. So that kind of area.
All right, Sean. Hey, enjoy yourself, okay? I mean, you deserve it. You really worked hard, and as a fellow conservative, I root for you, and lots of success, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll keep you updated and see, maybe you could potentially come out and cover the inauguration, right? Because I know that there's going to be a lot of important people who come
Mm-hmm.
through.
I might, I
Yeah.
might. I heard that it's pretty cold
Yeah.
over there, right?
I'll also get ready for that, especially from here from Southern California. So
All right, okay. All right, Sean. Thanks for stopping by.
absolutely. Great to see you,
Uh-huh.
Mark.
Let's keep in touch. Okay, bye.
Bye.